there's so much like, who's the true mom? The one who stays home or the one who works? Who's the better one? And it's just like we're all trying to figure it out and provide for our kids and love on them and live our lives.
Calling all supermoms. Grab your coffee, tea, water, smoothie, wine, or a cocktail, and join us for a dose of laughter, camaraderie, and the reassurance that you are not alone. We're diving into the complexity of modern motherhood because every mom deserves a mic drop. I'm Vanessa McAfee.
And I'm Renee Arthur.
And we are the hosts of the Motherhood Moments podcast. We are two sisters from Michigan who both had babies during the pandemic. After a few years of getting this new role of motherhood under our belts, we felt curious about how other moms are doing this mom thing. We decided to dive deeper and interview some amazing moms in our network, and we want to bring you into our network and share their stories with you.
Today, we're excited to have Latasha Holly, a dedicated advocate for Black maternal mental health, joining us for another episode. Latasha is a mom of 3 and has a background in mental health counseling and is very passionate about helping others as a community advocate. The reason why I'm so excited is because I know Latasha is going to bring some valuable insights to our discussion today. As an active member of the Black Breastfeeding Caucus and a volunteer with Birth Detroit, Latasha is passionate about supporting mothers. Join us as we chat with Latasha about her personal journey through motherhood and how that weaves into her experiences advocating for maternal health in the community. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Latasha. We're so happy to have you. Latasha, you have 3 young children. So you have to tell us, how did bedtime go tonight?
I guess relatively well. I don't know, everybody's different, but we don't do showers every night. We like rotate. So this is a shower night. Since they're older, so they're 7, Jay is 7, Z is 5, and then E, he's almost 2. He's like 21 months. So it's like a rotation. Start with Z, put her in, and then E goes in, and then J goes in. So it was smooth. We have like our little routine, and they all are sleeping through the night and they can get themselves to sleep now. So look, we're entering like a sweet spot, which is good. It's nice.
Yes, that is amazing. When did you start that routine of getting them all in the shower back to back?
Early on, I know a lot of people are like, why don't you do it fast? But I just feel like it takes so long, and showers are really fast, and you're not taking all this time to get ready, and they're not feeling bad because they want to play, and then you want them to go to sleep. Since he could stand up, he was doing showers with them. It's been over a year that we've been doing it that way.
I have to ask, are you saying E is falling asleep on his own?
Yeah. For a while, he was in our room. Like the first 9 months, he was in our room and then in a pack and play. And then we transitioned him to his own room. And then it was a very bumpy road because he would wake up like 4 or 5 times a night and you go back. And I was nursing at the time, so I would nurse him, go back to sleep. That was probably a whole close to a year. But I would say within the last 4-ish months, my husband will just take him in and then just lay him down. And he is awake, but he'll just settle himself and go to sleep. So sometimes he does wake up overnight. It just depends on the day, but usually he will sleep till like 6.
Nice.
That's amazing. I'm doing the equivalent of like a big stadium level shout and cheer and applause. Anytime I hear a mom tell me a story like that.
Yeah, it's a lot because you want your rest and they're interrupting it. You know, they need their rest. Sleep is something in motherhood. Like it's you always want more.
Oh, yeah. And we've been talking a lot about sleep throughout this season of the podcast. So please feel free to share any insights that you have, any tips or thoughts that you may have about sleep, because that's definitely been a theme. Maybe we are breaking the news to some people through this podcast that sleep can be very challenging to figure out in so many stages, past even just the newborn stage.
You know?
We've heard stories about what happens when they're siblings and how the bedtime routine changes. Each sibling may be different, but it sounds like you have gotten something figured out, a lot of things figured out.
Right.
I think routines help. That's what I kept reading everywhere. Make sure you have a routine, you stick to it. With my first, with Jay, was we did so much to get her to go to sleep. We just got tired of it. It was such a big ordeal. She'd listen to 5 songs, then you'd rock her, then lay down. The room had to be black, like dark, dark, dark. If there was any bit of light, she would just look at the light and stay awake. It was too much. And so we started with routine and we just it's simple. It's either take a shower, put your clothes on, and then we sometimes would read a story and then sing, do prayers, and then we have a bedtime song that we made up that we sing, and then turn off the light, and then they lay down. So they like expect that each time, and that helps. So their names are in the song, but as each new child comes, we just add their name to the song.
Oh,
And then they sing it sometimes too, and then they'll go and get in the bed. As they got older, it became like this is the expectation. Because I know some moms will tell me like too that they have kids coming in the room a lot, and I don't know. I feel like they've never really done that unless it's like a nightmare. And then even then, I'll give them a hug, try to soothe them, and then put them back in their bed. I just think. For me, sleep has always been really huge because I struggled to sleep a lot with my first. And so the second one with Z, I was just like, I'm not doing that again because I co-slept and just had
oh,
horrible sleep. And I didn't want to do that. And so with her, I didn't co-sleep. I got more rigid about, I never sleep trained, but just getting in a routine and continuing to, anytime they wake up, still just put them back in their bed again and again and again. Over time, they just get used to it. And sometimes, even if I know they're awake, if they're quiet, that's fine.
yeah. The routine.
Yes. Vanessa smiling.
I'm very pro routine.
She
Yeah.
believes in that.
I believe in a routine.
Yeah, because I'm like, I hear from some people and they're like, yeah, my kid's up till 10:30 or 11. I'm just like, that's my time. I just feel like you need your time at the end of the day. So if your kids are up with you, like, when do you get your time? So bedtime's important.
Yes. Pro tip from Latasha, mom of three, lean into that routine. As you mentioned, you have three children, J, Z, and E. We would like to talk a little bit about breastfeeding and your journey, starting with understanding your journey with all three. So, did you breastfeed all of your children?
Yeah, I did. I usually try to set a goal. So with the first with Jay, I was like, I'll breastfeed a year. And so I did 13 months with her. And then Z, I was like, I'll still do a year. And then I did 18 months. That was also because she had some weight issues and that was during the pandemic. So I was like, well, I need to stop. We'll just keep going. And then with E, the goal was a year. And then we went 17 months. And I was like, beyond ready to stop. He wasn't, but I stopped. When it gets to that point where you're just like, I don't like doing this, it's just good to just go ahead and stop. Let's see. With the first, she was the easiest. I really do feel like it's a mixture of things. She was full term. She was actually like past her due date. So she came out like really big and she just like latch on and she was just like would go. With my second, she was like almost 3 weeks early. She was smaller and then she just had a really hard time with the latch. So I like work with the doula, I work with a lactation consultant because breastfeeding her was really painful and I know it's not supposed to be like consistently painful like that. And so I didn't like nursing her because it was so uncomfortable, but we were able to work through some issues and then I was able to nurse her for a year and a half. I know I hear people like, I love breastfeeding so much. I've never loved breastfeeding. I do it because it's good for the child and it creates a bond, but it's not something I enjoy. It's like a labor of love. I know I'm helping their brain cells develop, giving them antibodies and like all this other good stuff. And Z was the only one who took a bottle. Both J and E never took bottles. And so it was always me. They were on me. And I could only be gone for like 2 hours before they need to feed again. So it was a lot. But I'm glad I did it.
Yeah. Yeah. Breastfeeding is a lot of work. It is a lot of work for moms.
Mm-hmm.
I like the way you said that labor of love.
Hmm. And yeah, the being tied to them, like having to come back home, only be out for 2 hours. It's like, where can you even go?
Nowhere. It was like you can go like very few places and then come back, like run to the store and then come back.
Yeah, exclusively breastfeeding for that long. Wow.
And that's why I was always excited about introducing food because then you can extend it even longer. Because if they're doing food, they're drinking water, then you're not the only thing. And so that always makes it easier, like around that 6 month mark. Because I always waited to 6 months to introduce food. That always was like, yay, like I have more time.
Hmm.
Well, that's amazing. I did exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months and then I supplemented with formula
Hmm.
and continued to do both and introduce purees
Yeah.
and salad foods and breastfeed. So it felt very busy, but I can say that's what I wanted to do. And it was so much work, but I'm happy that I did it because I got to do the bonding, but I recognized, okay, I'm not making enough milk, so I'm going to supplement. And then with the guidance of Vanessa, she was always in my ear, like, okay, got to introduce the solid foods. That's important. So I did purees, but then I weaned myself off of the purees to start doing solids.
Okay.
Yeah. And try not to wait too long before introducing solids. When I heard other mothers talk about that transition into solid food, it sounded so easy, but that was a point that was very hard for me.
Hmm.
I like did not understand what was going on. So I just want to quickly share a little resource for our
Hmm.
listeners. Vanessa introduced this to me. It's called Solid Starts, and it is a website you can go to. You can search any food, and it will break down every age range and give you details. Is it safe for the baby to eat in terms of choking? And then recommended like shapes and textures to serve the baby based off of the age. So it's like understanding like, oh, you can do apples, but you need to cut them not in a wedge because that's a choking hazard, but like in thin squares basically. And then that's safe. And that really, really helped me. So we'll definitely link that website in the description of the episode. But that was something that I found so intimidating that I'm like, why is everyone just understanding how to do this? I do not understand what foods I can give my child that has no teeth and can't talk.
Yeah.
I had the resources and I was still completely overwhelmed. I watched a lot of videos of babies eating,
Mhm.
and then I used that site. I made a lot of meal plans. I think I had a calendar at one point. It was a lot of things on my mind. And then still breastfeeding also.
Yeah. Yeah.
And still breastfeeding.
Still not sleeping.
Right, right. Because I think I was really interested in baby-led weaning, but I was so scary about choking hazards. That's why I was always worried about like, are they gonna choke? Like I don't know. And so I would try it and then they'd start choking and then I'm okay, I'm done. I started like you, Renee, with the purees. And I pureed all of her food and I would make her own baby food. Each one it got progressively less me. So then Zia was like, she was getting all the pouches. Same with E, all the pouches. And they still really like pouches. And then eventually like just eating what we eat. So yeah, it's confusing. And like you said, they don't talk, so you don't really know unless they just like spit it out. Then I'm like, okay, I guess you don't like that.
It's a whole ordeal, especially with still doing bottles or breastfeeding. But thanks for sharing. So, we would love to know if you have any advice for mothers who want to breastfeed, maybe facing some challenges. You mentioned the doula and the lactation counselor that helped you. Can you share a little bit more advice?
Yeah, the biggest piece of advice is just getting your team and just having support. When I have heard from women and talked and just heard different stories, like well, one of the biggest things is lack of support. Like they don't have anyone in their corner who's also like, you can do this and I'm going to support you in this. Do you need me to help you prepare food or just have stuff ready for you so you're not feeling stressed with having to do all the things and nurse? And even just like having your space set up, like with if you're using a boppy or a pillow or blankets, or you have your water, your phone, like everything you need right there so that you can just sit and be present and nurse and then transition to whatever afterwards. If you're feeling stressed and you're worried and you're like, my baby's not getting enough to eat and I don't know if this is gonna work, it decreases your milk production. If you're all like, or if you're just exclusively pumping and you're worried about not pumping enough, it works against you. The more you can have your space set up, the more you can have support, like a partner or someone who's cheering you on and trying to support you, who you can maybe talk to about some of the things you're going through, like a community. Like I was in a breastfeeding club, not with my first, but my second with Z, Black Mothers Breastfeeding Association in Detroit. They have a club for Black mothers, and you could talk and just share about things that are happening, like tips. So just any kind of space where you can connect and share, I feel like it makes a difference because you don't feel alone. Motherhood and breastfeeding is like sometimes very isolating. So it's like, oh, I'm not alone. There are other people who are out here who are trying to figure this out. And I think also too that it's just a journey. You might think you set out with this goal, but then you're like, actually that goal for whatever reason isn't achievable. But being able to shift and redefine what successful breastfeeding looks like to you, because it could look different.
Mm-hmm.
Like allowing that space and the room to just figure out what it is. Because it's a journey, like you're learning, the baby's learning, and then you keep learning again. Like they get teeth, you're learning again, and they're eating food and you're learning again. And so it's just a journey.
What was the name of the club?
The club was Black Mothers Breastfeeding Club. So there's like a virtual group, and then they do meet in person too for people who are local. It's a good support. It's just people who look like you and they have similar challenges, possibly with breastfeeding, or just hearing other people's stories and maybe tips for weaning or just different things. It was just nice to have that space to feel comfortable.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that resource. At least we know that there are organizations out there that rally around this cause. This is piquing my interest. I definitely want to look more into, do we even have a breastfeeding awareness month?
Yeah, August 25th to the 31st is Black Breastfeeding Week. And then I think the whole month of August is Breastfeeding Awareness Month.
Yeah, it looks like August is National Breastfeeding Awareness Month.
Okay, so we're definitely going to try to participate and do something.
I remember in the Black Breastfeeding Week, people posting their pictures in the different moms groups I was in and just posting pictures in their car or at home, pumping. It was just so cool to see all the different places and locations where breastfeeding is happening now, which was great.
One of my very first papers I wrote in college was about breastfeeding rooms on college campuses for faculty and or just anyone really. And I did a little research study and was walking to all the buildings to see which ones had mothers' rooms.
That's cool.
I was able to find that I was at U of M. There were many buildings that did have a room, but outside of campus, I remember just realizing like, oh, not at Target, not at all these places where women go to, there's nothing. So I was like, oh, this is really interesting. I was really young, but I was started thinking about, wait, why is that? Because in my paper, I kind of was comparing it to a handicap ramp, just in terms of the history of the advocacy and how that policy change came to be, where that is something that's required everywhere, and comparing that to a mother's room and how that's not required.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody's comfort level is the same. I had a friend and she hated breastfeeding in public. If there wasn't a space for her, she would either be in her car or she'd go home. Some people don't care. They'll just like whip it out anywhere. And I applaud women like that, but I just feel like there's such a spectrum where people are so having spaces where people can nurse comfortably, or even babies change. So even if the mom felt comfortable, the baby no longer can nurse with all these people around because they're just so excited and they want to see everything, so they're not even able to nurse.
Right.
It would be way better if there was more spaces where you can have the quiet and the space to nurse.
And the pumpers.
Yeah.
I exclusively pumped for so long, and you need electricity, you need a table.
These are some of the things that still stay top of my mind. Yes, there have been many gains made, but there's so many topics, including this one, where we could still see a lot of policy change and progress with employers, stores, and it could be a lot better because there's so many women that are working.
And I think there are more women who want to breastfeed but can't because, okay, you're at a job, they don't have the space and they won't give you the breaks to pump. So what are you going to do but not pump, you know?
Right.
Well, that's why we're talking about it to
Yeah,
spark this discussion. It's important.
it is.
Speaking a little bit about working, do you work now? Have you always worked with your children?
Mostly no. So I do work now. I work part-time, but when I had Jay, I was working, I stopped, and then I started back when she was maybe like 2 months, and it felt too stressful and overwhelming. So then I stopped again. And then I didn't start working again until she was like, I had my second, and she was like 2.5. And then I started doing a part-time job. And then that was through the pandemic. So that was also kind of different too. And then stopped again, had the third, and then I just now started back to work 2 months. It's only been 2 months now that I've been working part-time.
It's good to hear about the coming and going, just adjusting as life unfolded. It doesn't have to be, as just a straight journey into either.
Because I know I have friends who really enjoy staying home and they homeschool and they just really like it. But I just know for myself that I feel like my best self when I'm working and I'm not just home. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. It's just, I know for me, that was always like, that was missing. I was always good for that first 6 months to a year. And then after that, and then I start itching like, okay, now it's time to go back or do something or try to engage in a different way, like consistently volunteering or something where I'm like outside of the house and not always just interacting with kids. Just for my own well-being. I feel like for my own mental health. Well, especially with this last one, I was just like, yeah, I was getting to the point where I was just like, I actually don't really like you. Like I was feeling like very frustrated with him and I was not enjoying being home. And I'm like, yeah, this is a problem. So we need to look for daycares. And actually it was my husband who was like, you need to look for daycares, put him in a daycare, and then you can look for a job and then go ahead and transition because I wasn't in a good mental health space. So after that, I felt way better. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I really do like you. I really do like being around you after I came back and we weren't together 24/7.
Yeah.
And it was personality too. He's very cuddly and I'm not cuddly. So if we'd be in the house, he would just be on me all day. And I'm like, I need some space.
Sounds like you've decided to put yourself first.
Hmm. It's a balance, especially when they're like really young, like they need so much and we give a lot. But as they grow and they don't need you for everything anymore, you have more space to be flexible and figure out, okay, so how can I meet some of my needs too? Obviously, you should be trying to do that throughout, get your needs met and have time for yourself. But I just feel like it gets easier the older they get. You have more space.
What were some of the things that you noticed in yourself that made you feel like maybe your mental health was suffering?
I was just irritable. Everything would just bother me. Like, oh, you spilled a cup, or oh, you dropped that. Just stuff that babies do or like toddlers do that would just bother me. It didn't really make sense. Thought patterns where I was just kind of thinking about what would it be like not having any kids and not saying anything's wrong thinking that, but it was like on repeat all the time. Like, what would that
Mm,
be like? Oh my gosh, I miss being single. I miss not having kids. I miss not, so I just feel like it was like, okay, this isn't healthy. And I saw a therapist for a while because I was like, I didn't like my thoughts and I knew if you continue to let them get like that, it could have gotten like bad and I would have did stuff I would have regretted. So that helped a lot. And she just helped me take time during the day. What are times just for you? And so trying to infuse that into my day where I would take moments to myself, even while he was around. But yeah, thought life, irritability, lack of energy, just certain things where I was just like, I just don't feel like myself and I don't really like who I am right now, I need to make some changes because I just didn't feel healthy.
thank you for sharing that. I think those are really Honestly, they feel very normal, like just normal
Hmm.
thoughts, especially the irritability
Yeah.
and the thinking about the life before.
I know from other friends, they're like, yeah, when you get to, what do they say, like 8 and 9 and 10, like then they're like way more autonomous and it's so much easier. But I'm like, then you have different stuff that you're dealing with. Every age band has its challenge. So there'll be a new challenge then, but I think there will be, I don't know, you could leave them alone for longer and not have to be all hands on all the time.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And that was very brave of you to get help and to be honest with yourself.
I knew what my normal was, and I'm like, this isn't normal. And I never felt like this. Well, I don't feel like I felt like it for this long with any of my previous pregnancies or postpartum. And so I was like, yeah, I probably should talk to someone and just express how I've been feeling because I didn't want it to get bad. And I feel like it was bad, but it was like one of those things like maintenance. I just want to make sure that things continue to run well and don't spiral.
So, before when you were a stay-at-home mom, did you ever find a supportive network of other Black stay-at-home moms? Or did you kind of feel like you had a unique experience?
I found like individuals that I kind of could connect with. I did a lot of mom groups, and usually it'd be like me or one other Black mom, and then I would try to connect with her. There was like two other moms in Indiana that we would get together, two other Black moms, and we all had kids within 2 to 3 months of each other. So we would gather, we'd get together for play dates. Two of us stayed home, one was a working mom, but we would still all connect. And that was actually really nice. Just exchanging stories and just talking about different products and just random stuff. But with Z and then E, I don't really remember that. And then part of it too was I felt like I was busy, so I wasn't seeking it out as much. So that there might have been spaces like that. I wasn't really looking for it as much anymore. And I was just either going through the motions or like creating my own thing, going on story times at the library, meet other moms in different spaces like that, but not always Black moms. It would just be moms when I was just out and about.
We love story time at the library. Renee and I have taken our kids together.
I honestly, I do slightly miss that. Like, I know the kids liked it, but I also really liked it too because you can learn about new books. They get to play, they sing the songs, you learn new songs. I really like story time.
Shout out to the librarians actually that prepare for those because they memorize the story. They act it out with like puppets, sometimes even play instruments.
I was always looking for free activities to do, trying different parks out, going to different libraries, trying to see different events so that they had that were geared towards kids. I know they have classes and stuff, but I was always like, what's free? What can we do today? And trying to plan something, especially when I was home with two, having something planned, I just had one thing planned each day. Like, what will be our one thing that we need to go out and do? Because I don't know, some people are fine staying in the house, but I just always felt stir crazy after a while. So it's like, well, where's one thing we're gonna go? Are we gonna go to the library today? Are we gonna go to the store? Are we gonna meet up with somebody?
That makes sense. Yeah, that sounds very familiar to me, even like on the weekends.
I've learned from either the moms that do stay at home or they have in the past, I've learned from those moms as a working mom, like what to do if I do have an off day, or maybe daycare was closed, or maybe it is the weekend, but I don't want to just stay home. The frequency is less, but even if you're working, I think that it's really important to get out and do those activities. It's just a different type of learning and different type of bonding
Hmm.
to go to the library or to the museum. I always try to encourage people that I know, myself included. It's like, yeah, we're working full time, but there are those days where the daycare's closed or for whatever reason we're home. So it's like, what can we do?
Hmm.
And then that's when I get a little peek into like, oh, they're the stay-at-home moms.
They're both different beasts. There are pros and cons to both. But I feel like at the end of the day, we're all moms.
Yes.
I always used to feel that stress or pressure, like, what do you do? Oh, I'm home with my kids. Oh my gosh, that is such a hard, I know that must be such a hard job. It felt so patronizing, like, I guess, I don't know. I'm home with my kids, but yeah, there's so much like, who's the true mom? The one who stays home or the one who works? Who's the better one? And it's just like we're all trying to figure it out and provide for our kids and love on them and live our lives.
Absolutely. How has the transition been now that you're working again?
Especially the first couple weeks, month, it was just rough because I was getting home exhausted, but like, oh man, I still have to do stuff. Like I can't I don't have like a break. Like it's like, okay, now I gotta cook and interact with the kids and get ready for bed. It felt like a whirlwind. And then just trying to figure out drop off pickup schedule. That was like almost an hour and a half. It was a lot at once. So I'm into a better rhythm now. Take turns cooking, still eat out way more than we had, but that's fine. And just trying to take moments because Z, she's very like everyone's got their own personality, but she's the most sensitive of our three. And so trying to take time to spend time with her on her own is even harder working than it was before. And so making sure that everyone's getting their own little time so that they feel cared for and loved. Just trying to find a schedule that works. I still don't feel like we have one, but we're just kind of going through and trying to adjust, make changes as we go.
Yeah, for sure.
There's so much to unpack there. I'll just say thank you for sharing. Moments like this is why I really wanted to start this podcast because I just don't hear these conversations and these insights enough for any stage of your journey, like before, during, maybe you already have a couple or you're thinking about maybe having another, maybe you need to do a career change. Like it's just so complicated. It's not really just one thing. And I just feel I've been feeling the void so much. So
Mm,
I just really appreciate you sharing. And hopefully your message goes far and wide and many people can learn from you, all the wonderful advice you're giving.
yeah, thank you. I agree. I have a friend and we talk about different stuff all the time about motherhood, but I feel like in greater spaces, you don't really, even online, like there's some like Facebook groups I'm in, and it's just not helpful. It just becomes this huge comparison game. Well, this is how I did it. I did this at this time, and you should do it this way. There needs to be more spaces where we can come together, we can share, we can cry, like just be like, this actually sucks, and be real about it. And that's okay. It's okay if you don't like motherhood all the time. Like I don't. But I don't feel like that makes me like a bad mom. That's where I'm at that day, at that time.
There's just a moment. So, with young children, planning your family can be an ongoing conversation. What have been some of your experiences with family planning?
In the beginning, me and her husband were just kind of like, okay, the kids will come when they come. And so then after having the first one, and then I literally was just like praying, like, Lord, give me 2 years. But I had no concept of my body, how it worked, how to plan it. We just chose not to do anything. And so I was just like, Lord, just give us 2 years in between. And then it was like 2 years in between. And then after Z, I was like, okay, we need to figure something else out because I'm just praying that it won't happen again. Like I had a miscarriage after her, and I was just like, that was like my wake up call. Like, okay, one, my body wasn't ready, and then two, I was this is just not the right time. And so that's when I started looking into fertility awareness. And I was just trying to look for a natural way. I didn't really want to mess with my hormones. I didn't want to have to take something every day. Didn't want to have to use something every time. And so I just started looking stuff up online. And a friend told me about a book or actually a person, Lisa Hendrickson Jack, and she has a book called The Fifth Vital Sign. So I read that and then just started following that method. And so I used that for a year and a half, and then we're like, okay, let's try for another one. And then I was able within like 2 months to get pregnant. Once we said yes, let's try. And then we got pregnant with him, and then I still use it now to prevent further pregnancies. Fertility awareness. It's a lot of everyday things. You're noticing your body changes, you're taking your temperature, you're paying attention to cervical mucus. So it's a lot of work. It can be. You get used to it and it starts to become second nature, but I don't feel like it's for everyone because not everybody wants to do all that, you know? And you can also check your cervix to see its positioning to see whether it's open or closed.
How do you do that?
Do it with your fingers. So you like stick your fingers up there, and then I never done it. It just feels invasive for no reason. So I do it based on my basal body temperature. So taking my temperature when I first wake up and then checking cervical mucus throughout the day to tell whether or not I'm fertile or not. And so I just use those two to figure out when I'm ovulating and then when I'm like no longer fertile. Because like when you're get to a certain point in your cycle, you're no longer fertile, and then your cervix goes up, there's no more cervical mucus, and then you're like good to just have sex and not be worried about getting pregnant. But I like it. It's been fun. Part of me is like, if I ever have a practice or something one day, I wouldn't mind teaching other women about how to use fertility awareness. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, that would be incredible. So you said about the book that you read. Did you have any other resources that you used to learn about the different methods?
I was mostly, it was just online searching, trying to figure out how to work it. And I really was just winging it for a little while until I found her book. And then I feel like I had an actual, this is how you do it. These are different ways in which you can do this. And there are multiple ways of fertility awareness. The method that I use is called the Justice method, but there's all these other ones that you can use as well. Like some people, it's only they use cervical mucus, some it's only through temperature. So there are multiple ways that you can do it, but I just like that it was like natural. And I learned more about my body too, because I could tell like when I'm stressed or some other kind of like environmental change that will shift my cycle. I realized I had low iron, just paying attention to cycle patterns and bleeding patterns and stuff like that.
And do you record all of this?
Yep, I have a chart. So she has a daily tracker. So it has your temperature on it. You can record your observations, how often you see it throughout the day. When you wipe, you're supposed to look at the tissue. Sorry if this is like TMI, but you're supposed to look at the tissue, supposed to test it. So like you take it off and see the consistency of it and then keep a kind of log in your head and then at the end of the day, write it down. And you're either fertile or not fertile, but there are like times in when you're less fertile than the other mucus. So if you're trying to conceive, you want to make sure you time your sex around when it's more fertile because you have a higher likelihood of getting pregnant. But if you're not, then that's like you really don't want to be having sex during that time unprotected. The temperature helps you to figure out when you've ovulated. So your basal body temperature, it will be pretty low, but when you ovulate, after ovulation, it like jumps and then it will stay elevated until your next period comes. So then that's like your confirmation, like, okay, I've ovulated. And then if you're trying not to get pregnant, it's like safe to just have unprotected sex until your period comes.
Thank you so much for sharing. This is so informational. I knew this episode was going to be good. I knew it. I have a lot of thoughts. I'll just say the loudest one in my head. Imagine if this is the information all girls learned,
Hmm.
right? Let's just say not at the same time as learning about your period, but early 15, 16.
Yeah.
Just imagine just everyone just blanketly knowing the information.
When I told my mom, there's really only 5 or 6 days every cycle that you can actually get pregnant. And she was like, I didn't know that. So many women just we don't know about our bodies, either purposely or like they don't care, they haven't taught us this. And so it's not public knowledge that you can't get pregnant every day of your cycle. There is a time when it literally shuts down and then your egg is gone and you can't get pregnant. I'm with you. It'd be great to have this like sex education.
Because it's like the science part
Hmm.
of your body and it's being in tune with your body. And you talked about all the things that you learned about your body.
And knowing.
I mean, it's obviously it's tied to the trying to conceive, but it's also just really great information to know about how your body actually works.
And then for when I meet women who do know about this, because they're so in tune, sometimes they know just little random things about why their cycle is shorter, or some women even can ovulate twice. And it's not always that straightforward sometimes. And they'll be like, oh, that runs in my family. And it's like, oh, okay, that's so interesting and so powerful that you know that information. I know got exposed to it was called natural family planning just from growing up Catholic. That information, I learned it in high school. So I did learn it young. It is tied to the strong stance against hormonal birth control.
Hmm.
So there's that relationship, but the information was still helpful.
Yeah.
And then I learned more about it in college because I was the weird one who did women's studies and gender and health for college. So I got into a deep dive, but now I realize, oh, wow, a lot of people didn't cross that path. That
Mhm.
info just, it's not in the bathroom stalls. It's not in health class. Their moms aren't telling them. Their friends aren't joking about it. I guess we need some more TikToks. Someone make a TikTok or share a TikTok about fertility awareness.
Yeah. And I think there's bits and pieces when I was trying to get pregnant. I started testing my urine for ovulation.
Hmm.
I think maybe because I had the natural family planning background too. I also grew up in Catholic schools and I knew I could rely on it, but I don't think I really thought about the simpler ways of
Hmm.
confirming that the temperature and the cervical mucus. I think you're the first person I've known who's talked about actually using it.
I will just say this, Lisa Hendrickson Jack, if anyone reads her book, like she's very anti-hormonal birth control. So if you don't want to hear that, then she's probably not the person for you. But it's just, even with that, do you really think men would take something every single day that causes like just all these different changes to their body and side effects? They would find something different. They wouldn't do the shot or this patch that really causes you not to cycle anymore. Like you have a period, but it's not really a period because you're not ovulating, you know? I feel like sometimes society definitely does us dirty because there are other ways and we don't know them.
Yes, the powers that be, because there's some people that would be losing some money if this information
Yes.
was very widespread. That's the way I think about it.
There you go.
But this is the way that we can counter that and fight back. This is revolutionary talk. So hopefully, if you're interested in learning more, you can connect with some resources. We'll link some information in the show description as well about the fertility awareness based methods. Thank you. Thank you for bringing this conversation to the light. So important.
How important was the communication with your partner through all of this?
You have to have a partner. Well, you have to know what your backup is. So some people, like when we first started this, we would just not have sex on days when I was fertile. But now we have our backup method, which would be like a condom. So you could still have sex, but that is your method. So you're trusting the condom now, you're not trusting fertility awareness. So
Hmm.
obviously there's still, if a condom breaks, you're still in the same situation. So it is a communication, like just being open and honest about when you're fertile, when you're not, and just keeping that pathway open so that there is conversation around it.
Yeah, that's great. You guys have that communication.
Hmm.
So, final question. What is your normal evening routine?
I usually go downstairs, I will do dishes. I've lately started listening to audiobooks, like within the last couple of days, so it's super recent. But that's been nice to listen to that while I'm doing dishes. And then after that, either watch a show or read and just relax. And then I get ready for bed and then go to sleep. So that's my routine. Weeknight evenings, I don't usually like go out and do stuff. I feel like if anything, it'd be like doing something on the weekend, possibly, but honestly, still don't do a ton. So that's pretty typical for me.
That's nice. What kind of audiobooks?
I read Niger Wives by Vanessa Walters. And it was really good. It's like about this woman. She married a Nigerian man and she moved back with him to Nigeria and then she went missing. And so then her aunt, she's like from the UK. So her aunt went to Nigeria to find her. And there's this whole network of women who are like foreign wives coming from different countries that moved to Nigeria with their husbands. And they had a group that would kind of keep up with each other and just, cultural difference and stuff. So the book is about finding out what happened to her. It was like a suspense. So it was really good. It's really interesting.
Very cool. I just looked it up.
All right, that sounds like a Facebook post I read last week in one of my wives groups. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Motherhood Moments podcast. We appreciate you because we know life gets busy. Maybe you are doing chores during nap time, on a walk, running errands, or rinsing berries. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Vanessa and I are committed to keep sharing more motherhood wisdom. If you enjoyed this episode, please support us by leaving us a review. That's a wonderful way to show your support and let others know they are not alone. Until next time, and remember to check in on the moms in your life.